here of this guy.
It's called, Is This Woman Crazy?
But now I'm worried I'm gonna have wanted to watch this video.
Let's play a game. It's called, Is This Woman Crazy or Brilliant?
A lot of these plants we eat, like carrot, people think are food. They're not food.
Pause. Yeah, you heard correctly. She just said carrots are not food. I bet you weren't expecting that. I know I wasn't. So what's the answer to the question, crazy or brilliant? Crazy. She's clearly crazy. Carrots are food. Full stop. But here's the problem. How would her more than 1 million followers answer that question? How would the hundreds of paying attendees to her own conference answer that question? You were looking at one of the internet's hottest rising food gurus. I'm not going to say her name, and I'll explain why in a second. But about a year ago, she started making videos on social media. They blew up, got tens of millions of views, big profits, yada yada. You've heard the story before. What makes her unique is not her fast rise, but how she did it. Let's review. This woman is taking reasonable people, telling them carrots are not food, and these reasonable people are responding with, oh yeah, I believe you. So what's happening here? This is not a video about carrots. What I do is review logic. And when I saw her video, I knew I had to examine exactly how her reasoning is working. So I began by making a visualization of her argument. I discovered she's using some really sophisticated manipulation techniques, like persuasion architecture, unique logical fallacies, while tapping into some cognitive biases in a way that I've never seen before. Needless to say, I was impressed. Which leads me to change my answer. She may be crazy, yes, but she's also brilliant in an evil sort of way. The nutrition space is uniquely complicated. It's so full of bad information. It's like you need multiple degrees just to make heads or tails of anything. And yet, food is very important. I eat it every single day. A lot of people do. Additionally, it's entangled with our emotions. That's why food gurus like her exist. Regular people, vulnerable people go to things like her conference seeking guidance about food, but instead they get slammed with these potent psychological manipulations for the profit of some wannabe Viking lady. Seeing that sort of exploitation just kind of makes me mad. That's why I spent way too much time making this video to visualize exactly how her deceit works. But you ask, how can I possibly do that? I don't have multiple degrees in nutrition science, if that isn't already clear. In this video, I am going to prove unequivocally that this woman is a master manipulator, and I'm going to do so using nothing but her own words and the science of logic. I'm going to go through her argument point by point, putting names to her manipulation techniques and visualizing how they work. So you can then take that and build your own mental model of understanding and fortify yourself against manipulators like this lady. And after we've collected this data, we'll calculate her own personal logic score and finally rank her on the bad logic hall of shame. And quick tease, this bedazzled barbarian lady, well, she's a special one. So let's examine the logic. Okay, earlier I mentioned I'm not going to say her name. For one, she doesn't need any more attention. The other thing is I don't want to deal with her followers because frankly what I'm about to say is not very supportive of their dear leader. This is a small channel and I put a lot of work into these videos and I don't want to deal with their nonsense. So hit that like button, share it with a friend who may enjoy it, and if you care about logic, then subscribe for more content. It helps a lot. If you already know how a logic instant replay works, then feel free to jump to the next chapter. But if you're new here, here's what I do. Just like an instant replay in sports, the goal of a logic instant replay is to slow things down so we can visualize and figure out exactly how the logic is working, which then allows us to isolate the deception, put it to the side, and reveal exactly the true meaning of the argument. This is done so in an argument review map. And the process follows an acronym called CLEAR. C is for conclusion, which she states very clearly. Carrots are not food. This is our North Star, and everything we are about to do is directed towards this conclusion. L is for labels. It's important that we are all on the same page as far as the meaning of terms, ideas, etc. Because if different people have different ideas of what a term actually means, we're just going to be arguing past one another, and we want to avoid that. Immediately, I can see that we need to add food. Now, food may seem obvious enough, but I always thought that carrots are food. So we're making a note of this label because it's actually super critical since her whole argument is based on the idea that carrots are not food. E is for evidence, which we'll find in her verbatim argument. Let's highlight the different premises and evidence of her argument. Let's number them, reference them in the evidence category. Now let's add that visual map of her argument. With the premises moving towards the conclusion, you can see that these three sections correspond and are color coordinated. And A is for assess. This is the fun part. Let's do that now.
And once you know this, you can't unknow it.
Bam, strong start. This is not a premise or a piece of evidence. It is a really clever framing device. It's the very first thing that she says, so it affects everything that comes after it, including the conclusion. And I'm going to put it in the argument map like this. Basically, what it does is it primes the audience in one brilliant way, and that is it disarms their critical thinking. It politely says, hey, don't question what I'm about to tell you, just believe it. This is exactly what a manipulator wants to accomplish. Not to mention that it has this youthful mean quality to it. Once you know, you can't not know. It's brilliant. It's just freaking brilliant. Okay, here's her first premise.
A lot of these plants we eat, like carrot, people think are food. They're not food. The orange carrot was created at the turn of the 18th century, and we act like they've been around since the turn of time.
You know what? I'm going to give her that one. I do act like that. I mean, just ask my friends. I'm like a broken record. Carrots have been around since the turn of time. She uses the word create, so she implies this is bad. Why is it bad? She doesn't say now or later, so she's keeping it ambiguous. There's this effectiveness in ambiguity. Don't explain yourself if you don't have to. Plant a seed of fear and doubt. Also, don't explain something that has no explanation. All right, let's do a quick thought experiment. Can you think of any food in the produce section of the grocery store that has not changed in the past 250 years? Let's look at this watermelon from the 1600s. Does that ancient piece of crap look good to you? No. Look at all that white sinewy stuff where there should be red. We all know that the white part is gross. Thank God our ancestors from the 1600s created watermelons as we know them. Here's the thing. Sometimes just as important as what you do say is what you do not say. That all food is created. Speaking of ancestors, her premise here is tapping into a cognitive bias we all have that in logic we call the wisdom of the ancients, where people assume that ideas from the past are inherently superior. This cognitive bias is written in our cultural DNA and is basically that we're programmed to trust the people that came before us. Most cognitive biases have a evolutionary reason for why they exist. They used to serve a positive function. And here's a living example of this. There are still indigenous groups that live off the land. And the ones that gather their food from the coast need to know that some shellfish are poisonous. These indigenous peoples know perfectly well which ones not to eat. But here's the thing. If you ask them why they shouldn't eat it, they have no idea. They don't even know it's poisonous. All they know is that it's their custom not to eat it. That custom is created from a verbal tradition of one generation telling the next not to eat it. So you see, this cognitive bias is manifesting in a strong trust of the younger generation towards the elder one. Conversely, that if individuals that do not have this bias, they eat the poisonous shellfish, and then they get taken out of the gene pool. This is how the cognitive bias serves this positive evolutionary role. Keeps people alive. She knows really well that this bias runs strong in us. In fact, her whole paleo diet guru shtick is based on this bias. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying she's exploiting that. Okay, let's move on. But before we do, if you like this work and you want to help create more Logic Instant Replays, then you can become a paid member on the Patreon. Link for that is below in the description.
The turn of time.
This is a wild carrot, also known as Queen Anne's lace. They're far from the sweet and tender carrots we're used to. Through selective breeding practices that began in the 18th century, agronomists transformed these wild roots into the big orange carrots we see today.
Much of her argument comes from this documentary telling us the story of carrots. Made in the 18th century, bred from Queen Anne's lace. Carrots used to be something else, and now we've changed them through selective breeding. Again, what's wrong with selective breeding? So I see a logical fallacy here. This is circular reasoning. The orange carrot is bad because it's young, and it's young because it's been transformed. We're gonna add that in. It's unclear to me what this is saying. Like, the wording is weird. I wouldn't call carrots tender. As I went down a rabbit hole to find more on this documentary, I was about to do a reverse image search for this weird JPEG, and then I thought, why is this weird JPEG in this documentary? And then it hit me. The narrator is an AI voice.
This is a wild carrot.
You see what she's done here? She's made her own fake documentary to support her baseless argument. Like, wow. I don't think I have ever seen that before. I mean, her premises and evidence suck, so she needs it. You know, there's this idea of weasel authority. We see it in the form of researchers have found, experts believe. It's an empty way to create credibility. I think she's actually extending this weasel authority into weasel logic. And in doing this, she has created a new bias, which I've never seen before. And I would have to call this the English accent bias. And I have to hand it to her. That's an innovative way to sell a lifestyle. Good for her. But as an American, I have to say I hate it because I think we can do better.
What are you talking about, Ben? Americans are bloody brilliant and attractive, and literally everything they do is good and right.
I mean, he brings up a good point. And finally, to this premise, she has omitted a couple important facts. First, the orange carrot has been around longer than the 1800s. We see it in this painting dated 1553. But that doesn't even matter compared to this. She says the orange carrot was bred from the wild root, Queen Anne's lace. No. It was bred from the yellow carrot, which has been around for thousands of years. She left that out because it would be very, very inconvenient to this argument that she's trying to create. And that's why I act like it's been around since the turn of time, because it has.
What most people don't know is that Queen Anne's lace, the root itself, was used as the morning after pill. It is so toxic, it will abort a fetus.
Wait, what? Isn't it thrilling to learn something that overturns what you thought you knew, and now you know better? This is not one of those times. What she just said is not true on several levels. Let's add some terminology. Her premise is carrot is toxic, and her evidence is root will cause abortion. Yikes. So this actually has the elements of a solid premise because it gives us something that supports the conclusion, which did not happen in the last premise. But in order to visualize this BS, I first need to tell a story. In the course of human history, it appears that some ancient peoples, like the ancient Greeks, would take Queen Anne's lace, grind it up into a paste to prevent a pregnancy. Did it work? Honestly, this is irrelevant to examining her logic. What is relevant is the part of the plant that they used to do this. It was not the
Root itself.
It was the seeds. They ground up the seeds to make a paste. The root is what became the carrot, the part we eat, the part that you can still eat today, except it's just a less good carrot. So her primary evidence is based on a simple untruth. But wait, there's more. Here's a simplified version of her position. This is so aggressively wrong, I can't help but think it's intentional. She's lying to her audience, which I'm actually super surprised she's doing because it is so risky for her. Because if her audience recognizes this lie, I feel like being lied to is so universally terrible, they're gonna run the other way. So what she does is she conceals that lie under layers of bad reasoning. So let's visualize them. There's the lie, there's a category mistake, and emotional language. I just want to say real quick that I'm getting into these details because manipulative people suck. And I believe when we literally see examples of how their manipulation works, then it strips them of their power. So let's build a mental model that resists manipulators by putting names to what she's doing. So what the heck is a category mistake? It's when you take an idea that exists in one category and inappropriately apply it to this category. Here's an example. An octopus is a weird fish. Well, no, not really. They're both sea creatures, but they're not both fishes. The category mistake for our example is right here. Everyone's favorite A word. Let's first talk about the morning after pill. If you didn't know how it worked and you were only going off of what her words imply, you would think you would take a pill and it would flood your body with enough toxins and it would just kill anything in there. That sounds bad, right? Well, that's not how it works. How it actually works is super clever. The morning after pill is a dosage of hormones that tells the body not to release an egg. Just wait a couple days. So because there's no egg, there's no pregnancy, which last time I checked makes it literally impossible to have an abortion. So how does the category mistake apply to our example? The thing that contraceptives and abortion share is this abstract concept of a baby not existing. In that way, they're similar. How they get there is completely different. But you see, because she does not have a good argument, her tactic here is to erase those differences. And then she takes it a step further. A fetus is a prenatal human offspring at least 8 weeks old. The hormones of the morning after pill or Queen Anne's lace do not affect a fetus. But using this category mistake and mashing together these two things that are not the same, you're bringing all this emotional baggage along. I mean, even talking about this non-existent reality, I find myself getting a little emotional. What about you? These emotions basically act as a sleight of hand to distract people from very bad reasoning. I said before that her premises are staged to be good, and if she could give evidence on how the root is toxic, then they would be effective. But of course, it's BS. So to make her argument work, she has to insist all these things that are not true. She has to lie about history. She has to misrepresent what contraceptives are, and she lies about what it does to a fetus. I mean, I can't. Let's do a little psychology here. When your argument is so lazy, she's got to have this grandiose view of herself when she thinks she can get away with this. Like, really, what is she? Is she a sociopath? Is she a narcissist? If you think you know, let me know in the comments.
Will abort a fetus. And yes, it's not as toxic now that we've bred the poison out of them.
Oh, thank God, she's come around. She very clearly knows this is all sin.
But this is the root, and we're feeding them to our fucking kids, and it's gotta stop. I don't want to see babies eating herbs that are able to abort a fetus.
What just happened? They're not toxic, but don't feed them to our kids. Actually, as a logic guy, I'm pumped to see this because this is kind of special. This is a clear fallacy of formal logic. By formal logic, I mean how the sentences are structured and how that affects the reasoning. Here's an example of what I mean. If toxicity is present, then don't eat. If toxicity is not present, then eat. You see, formal logic is math-like. What she said, if not T, then not E. Invalid. It's clear as day. I say it's special to see because it's rare you get an opportunity to review formal logic. I'll never forget sitting down in my very first logic class and seeing all these math equations up on the screen and thinking, what the heck is this? I didn't sign up for a math class on accident, did I? It's stuff like, if A, then B, therefore C. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. What I was looking at were formal logical arguments. And that's the first thing they teach you in a logic class because it's a good place to begin because it's so clear and black and white. You can then expand it to informal logic, which is the logic that we all deal with at any given day. Call it human logic. But then you never see formal logic again because human beings, logic in the real world, is never that black and white. But here it is. Our barbarian Viking woman is so bad at logic, she's actually using invalid formal logic. Wow. She's special. In fact, she is so special, we should also examine her logic in an informal sense. So what she's doing here is presenting an argument that is basically smashing together two opposing positions. I call this rhetorical deception sandwiching. It's safe, but we can't risk it with our kids. It's actually really brilliant, rhetorically speaking. She finally levels with us. She says, I'll give it to you guys. We all know carrots are not actually toxic. It disarms us. We think, oh, thank God she's reasonable. But then she pulls a rug out from us. She follows immediately with the threat of the greatest stakes. We can't give it to our kids, the baby's safety. So she creates this disorienting, unspecified fear. We don't know what to think, so we just have to go with the safe choice and believe her. Whatever you say, lady, I just don't want my baby having a fetus. You see, in the course of a sentence, it's pretty effective, but when we hit pause, put it in writing, she looks like a fool.
Herbs that are able to abort a fetus. That is what Queen Anne's lace looks like.
Okay, now she's just dirt shaming a root vegetable. Would you say that about a potato? You could describe this as an ad hominem attack because this part of her argument avoids any substance about the carrot or Queen Anne's lace and just calls it ugly. I made a dedicated video about the ad hominem. I'll put a link in the description below.
This is what Queen Anne's lace looks like. And this is what we've created today. This is the clown food. Do you guys see it? You see how it looks like it should be in a circus?
Oh, I get it. She's confusing circuses with a farmer's market. This entire part of the argument is a logical fallacy called begging the question. It's a form of circular reasoning where she's taking the conclusion, using it as a premise, and just assuming people will take it as truth. This is one of the most empty, silly premises I have ever heard, and this is why she thinks she can get away with it. Because she has created this authority image of herself. The optics, the stage, the theatrics, the lights, the screens, the hair, the dumb rat skin scarf she's wearing. All of this has added up to this image of an authority that is its own form of argumentation. Yet again, she's tapping into this really strong cognitive bias that in logic we call an appeal to authority or an authority bias. She thinks she can get away with it, saying ridiculous bullshit, factual inaccuracies. She's getting people to doubt basic reality. And if you look at her comments, the vast majority of them are super supportive. What can critical thinking do about that? Let's score her logic. But how, you may ask? Her argument, any argument, is subjective and squishy. It's more complex than just right or wrong. Well, for that, we have the logic score 9,000. Never before in history has logic been so clearly definable. It works by taking the individual elements of an argument, the quality of the premises, and balances that with the strength of the logic, all the information we just collected. And then it uses a weighted equation to boil down that information into a single measurement. And that is cogency. That's all we care about. Then we can take that number and use it to rank her in the bad logic hall of shame. Let's review. Let's begin with the most basic elements, and that is labels and terminology. Here are the important labels that she used. I'm looking at selective breeding. What's wrong with selective breeding? She just did not provide evidence to why we should be suspicious of this. The biggest red flag here is the most important term, and that is food. She gave us very little insight on why carrots are not food. She even said that carrots are food, but just food for clowns, which is a problem because clowns are people too. So this means that every premise that she has created has an ambiguous term in there, which means every premise is squishy. So each category within begins at 100% and we mark it down based off of strikes. I'm going to give her a 5, which is frankly generous. Okay, let's look at her basic facts. The crux of both premise 1 and 2 are based on multiple untruths. Premise 3 is the kind of untruth an idiot would use. This one's easy. Its score is 1. Every premise is based off just a complete untruth that is easily proven. Getting fired up. Next, let's talk about omissions. Sometimes the only thing more important than what you do say is what you do not say. Every beat of premise 1 is comprised by important information that is left out. Orange carrots existed in the 1500s. We have a painting of that. Yellow and purple carrots existed for thousands of years. She's not going to put this stuff in that hurts her BS argument. I am going to give her a score of 3, which I also think is generous. Next, let's look at the contamination of her premises. When I check for contamination, I use another acronym called froth scum. There are 4 big logical fallacies I'm seeing, not to mention the formal fallacy. The rhetorical devices, I'm seeing about 5. She hits the classic of killing babies rhetorical device. You know, using emotion isn't wrong per se. When you use it to cover up bad logic, then it is a BS rhetorical device. This is not normal how densely these are packed. So let's check out the cognitive biases. I'm seeing 3 big ones. Let's not forget about the English accent cognitive bias used in a fake documentary. Just embarrassing. And then everything is just overarching authority bias, which again, I think she thinks she can get away with this because of this perception she has of herself. Not on my watch, lady. And then everything begins with this framing device. Once you see this, you just cannot unsee how bad this logic is. Premise 3 is actually pure contamination. 10, clearly. It'd be 11 if I could, but I can't. Okay, a really important part of cogency is the quality of the premises. I think we've already decided that the premises are terrible. Big part of that is how well grounded they are. How well are they based in provable support? She uses history, but it's really cherry picked and also just completely fabricated. She made a fake documentary that doesn't support her conclusion. Wow. I guess technically P2 does support the conclusion even though it's baseless. So I'm going to give her a 3. All right, finally, let's talk about strength of argument. This is the whole dang point. Let's do a thought experiment about premise 1. Suppose everything in premise 1 is true. Does that information support the conclusion? No, it does not. That makes premise 1 a non sequitur. Premise 3, also a complete non sequitur. Argument strength 3. Okay, this is the moment of truth. It's taken a lot to get here. I'm kind of exhausted. Logic score 9,000. Do your thing. What? 0? Is this thing working? Yes, it is working probably. Yeah, this is pure bullshit. Her BS is so densely packed you could bounce a quarter off of it. And let's not forget that she is making money off of this reel. And she's finding so much success that in the course of editing this video, she decided to raise her prices more than 30%. Millions of people have seen this. It just, it gets me. It gets me. We have only one thing left to do, and that is to rank her in the Bad Logic Hall of Shame. Play the music. She's number 1, obviously, for a couple reasons, one of which she's the first one I'm doing, but I picked her first. I just knew she was so special. Her logic is just so atrocious. This is obviously part of a series. I have a lot of other really interesting people to review. Can they beat her? I don't know. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you don't miss any of those reviews. All right, that's it. I want to thank my Patreons. I especially want to thank Allie. Thank you, Allie, for being a Patreon. If you would like to support more Logic Instant Replay, then check out that link for Patreon below in the description. And if you want to nominate a video that you see for Logic Instant Replay, then just DM me a link on the socials at Framing Logic.
Okay, on a scale from 1 to amazing, how amazing was this video? You got a shout out from Tectone.
It's not about equity instead of equality at all.
28714. Nice.
We don't have material equality as a baseline in this country. We don't have that at all. I'm advocating for a baseline of material equality, and I'm advocating for better worker protections, better worker rights, and less alienation.
That's all a lie. That's a f***ing lie. What he's talking about can happen in a capitalist system, and it is explicitly not what socialism is about. It's not about materially equal conditions. That's called welfare or redistribution, which capitalism can do, right?
I will say, whether you like or hate Destiny, I think we can all agree he is definitely the strongest debater on the entire platform.
True.
Yeah, I'll be real. I enjoy listening to Destiny talk, even on issues I disagree with, because the guy can really just fucking go in. The guy is incredibly researched and incredibly, he can talk really fast. Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
Hey, you were talking.
Now, once again, you can say that you hate him. That's all good. I don't care. I'm just saying, acknowledging his gift as a debater is just, I feel like it's just common sense. Destiny's fine until you mention Trump to him. I got no idea. I don't really watch much of his content. I just really like watching him rant.
Specifically about getting rid of or
Nobody tell him about yesterday? Wait, what did he do yesterday?
Nobody talking about that. Oh, no. Oh, dude. Every single thing that happens to this guy, his life must flash before his eyes. Like, oh, no. Oh no, the writers are getting lazy this season. It's like, how many things can I repeat that Biden did without conservatives? Oh my God, true. His bone spurs. Okay, what is all this bullshit? What do we have here?
Treaties were signed, promises made and broken. Is it stealing to take back what was stolen?
Stolen? Who's stealing them?
Us. It's time to get out of there.
Let me introduce a friend of mine. Smart, agile, and will let you look into places with the tightest security.
I could probably bench press every one of them.
The locksmith strikes again. Hold on.
Listen, are you having second thoughts?
Nope. Just hoping you want.
What happened to the TikTok lives? I decided to not do it. I'm completely abandoning the idea. I'm just not doing it at all. I just, for no reason, it has nothing to do with the fact that I've been sick, that I've been out of town, that all that. I just completely decided not to do it. So please just keep asking over and over and over and over and over again, because that's exactly what happened. Thank you. Jesus. Fuck.
Don't get me killed.
Yeah.
I know what you and your little crew are doing.
Nobody threatens my family or my friends and gets away with it. So we are going to do whatever it takes to take back Africa's belongings, and we're going to do it together.
Okay, this is cringe. I don't care. What is this?
I'm fine. Sorry. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. It's okay? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. Sorry? Yeah, yeah.
Some water?
No water. Just sugar.
Is he down?
Let me get out of the road.
Yo, yo, yo! Yo! Yo, yo, yo!
Whose fault is this? I don't even know like what he's biking on.
Yo, yo, yo! Yo!
I have no idea.
Yeah. Max. Yeah. Almost.
Wait, why do we care about this? He's biking on a road bike and he's going way too fast. Oh, okay. It doesn't sound like he blamed anybody or anything, no? Did he? Or, I don't know. Okay. I don't know why the fuck I got like this.
A lot of people try to bring this up. Like, what do you think happened on January 6th? It was awful. January 6th was really bad. I mean, I've said this 50 fucking times. The thing is that a lot of people try to bring this up. Like, I don't give a fuck about January 6th. That shit happened years ago. The people that did it went to jail like they should have. And they were in jail for fucking years. Like, if they had been tried for those crimes, the majority of them would have probably gotten out earlier than if they were sitting in there in the first place.
Oh, he's running with the with the fake news that there was no due process for those people.
They were pardoned? Yeah, but I know what is the criminal amount of time that you have for, like, getting in trouble for that? It's like probably 3 to 5 years, and they were there for 3 to 5 years. That's pretty fucking fair, guys. I'm sorry to say.
Hey, todo está bien, papá. Hey.
Jesus.
I'm
not doing anything.
Hey,
Yep.
hey.
No. I don't think Trump's going to have a military parade. What if it's just an excuse to get military personnel equipment into DC to seize it? What? I don't want it. Game of Thrones, a video game.
You may think you know how the game is played. But this is not the game you know.
Wait, why does the ice spear break weapons but not shields?
This is your legacy.
It's Captain America's shield. Okay.
You decide who wins and who dies.
Which actor is it Tywin? The guy who plays Tywin?
Thrones. War for Westeros.
Damn. It's always crazy when they make trailers for games that are of a totally different genre than what the trailer looks like. Like, it looks like an action game or whatever, but if it's an RTS, it's kind of weird, but okay. Okay. What's going on here? Oh, National Guard. Soldiers were spotted in LA today after 2 days of clashes between demonstrators and riot police. California National Guard troops arrived in downtown LA after President Trump's order. A British photographer was shot by police in LA and was undergoing surgery on Sunday to remove what doctors believed was a 14mm high-velocity sponge bullet from his thigh. Demonstrators have converged on a federal facility that the local mayor said was being used by agents who conducted workplace raids. Gavin Newsom, the California governor, calls president's decision purposefully inflammatory. Listen to updates on Times Radio. What the fuck? What's going on?
They're coming out.
Imagine a RoboCop comes out. This is boring. Hold on. Gameplay was real.
One of the most beloved and iconic series of all time. This is why we're so excited at PlaySide Studios to be developing a real-time strategy game for this franchise. You step into Westeros at its most dangerous. Call your banners, lead iconic heroes, and rewrite the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. Like millions of others, we experience the TV show week to week. The betrayals, the shifting power, the moments that left the world stunned. That emotional weight, that unpredictable resources, securing key locations, and building the power you need to claim victory. You'll fight battles across Westeros, from the frozen north to the gates of King's Landing. Deploy infantry, cavalry,
Pre-alpha development footage. Oh, this game is like 5 years from being released.
siege engines, giants, and dragons to push through enemy lines or hold your own. Game.
Okay. Stop. Don't care about you.
We're seeing new video showing the chaotic moments protesters and federal agents clashed across Los Angeles.
It marked the second day in a row of unrest as ICE raids continue. Explosive flashbangs and clouds of tear gas filled downtown LA last night as police declared an unlawful assembly. There also appears to be some looting at a convenience store in Compton. LAPD says they
What do you think in general about the police? To be honest, as I started watching Donut Operator the last 2 years, I've become very pro-police. Donut Operator is a dipshit. My thoughts about the police are the same as my thoughts about basically any large organization. I think most of them are probably fine. There's a couple of bad apples. It is what it is.
detained several people and eventually arrested 27.
And this comes as the National Guard troops that President Trump ordered have started to arrive.
Eyewitness News reporter Amanda Palacios joins us live from downtown Los Angeles with the breaking update. Amanda.
Good morning. Yeah, we've already seen a large growing National Guard presence here in downtown LA. If you take a look behind me here, you can see troops are stationed along Alameda Street as another protest is expected to take place later today near City Hall. This follows President Trump's deployment of 2,000 National Guard members in response to a series of immigration protests across the city. This is new video from overnight showing the troops arrive. They stopped at City Hall after driving through Paramount, then ended up here at the federal building. Meantime, this follows another night of protest. Video from last night shows tense moments in downtown LA as protesters clashed with police, some setting off fireworks and starting fires. Officers responded with what appeared to be tear gas to disperse the crowds. In a separate incident, demonstrators were seen entering a damaged convenience store in Compton and looting items from inside. According to the LAPD, multiple individuals who returned to the area after a dispersal order was issued on Alameda Street were detained and are expected to be booked for failure to disperse. We spoke with Mayor Bass about the deployment of the National Guard and believes it's not necessary.
My concern, and we have experienced civil unrest, and I remember 1992 very well, that one of the worst things you can do is have an extreme presence of law enforcement that gets everybody agitated and the violence actually escalates.
And today,
is there a good video or article covering the start of this? People are saying there was like a big ice raid or whatever, but like what actual, is there like a good something cover? I didn't catch the start of this at all.
Real time lets you listen in briefly to hear what the protesters
See a visual timeline of the LA immigration protests and the federal response. President Trump has called on the National Guard to deploy Los Angeles in an extraordinary show of force after 2 days of isolated clashes between federal law enforcement agents and people protesting immigration raids in the area. Here is a timeline of the events since Friday. I didn't know you don't like Donut Operator. Any specific reason? I like you both. Because he didn't like my take on the Trump protester guy, or I'm sorry, on the firefighter on the riot getting killed. He thought I was being disrespectful, and so he rewrote our hangout and said that they hated me the whole time and all this like cringe shit when we all hung out and had a fun time for like 4 days because he's a pussy and he can't stand up to his audience at all. And he's an actual like cuck, spineless fuck who has to give in to everything the conservatives say because without them, he is nothing, which I just think is kind of pathetic, but you know. Okay, timeline of the events. On Friday, protesters gathered outside a federal building complex in downtown LA. On Sunday morning, the first National Guard troops arrived at the Metropolitan Detention Center. By Saturday evening, police had ordered an unlawful assembly on these blocks. So I think that, so just to understand, I believe the National Guard, every state has its own National Guard that it can deploy, but if the federal government, if the President of the United States wants, he can come in and take over the National Guard and kind of like order them to serve under like federal orders, basically. Let me make sure I understand that correctly. The National Guard is a state-based military force becomes part of the U.S. military's reserve components of the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force when activated for federal missions. Yes, okay. It is a military reserve force composed of National Guard military members or units of each state, the territories of Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia for a total of 54 separate organizations. I believe that activating them generally requires the state governor to issue a request to the president to have the federal government come in to use them, I believe. Can Newsom order them to stand down then? I mean, once the president has control, the president has control, but... there's too many laws governing this. I guess we'll see. So on June 6th, around 3 p.m. Pacific, a crowd of dozens gathered in the Fashion District near downtown LA after Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents appeared at an apparel manufacturer there. Sorry, hold on. Dozens of federal agents arrived in riot gear to disperse the crowd and clear a path for 2 white passenger vans leaving the area. The operation was one of 3 immigration raids on Friday in Los Angeles. Later in the afternoon, hundreds of protesters gathered outside the Los Angeles Federal Building, calling for an end to immigration raids in the city. Officers from the Department of Homeland Security fired pepper balls at the protesters before the LA Police Department dispersed the crowd. More than 100 people were arrested on Friday, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. This is still on June 6th. Hundreds of protesters were arrested. I wonder if these were federally arrested or state arrested, because it says the Department of Homeland Security and the LAPD were there. I wonder. Saturday morning, separate clashes broke out between protesters and law enforcement officers in Paramount, a small city about 20 miles south of downtown LA, amid rumors that immigration agents planned to raid a Home Depot in the area. Protesters kicked and threw objects at law enforcement vehicles, while officers deployed tear gas. It said more than 100. Oh. Not hundreds. Protesters kicking through objects at law enforcement vehicles. Later that day, tensions escalated. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department ordered protesters to disperse and warned that they would face arrest or use of force if they did not. Officers shot tear gas canisters into the crowd as protesters retreated. President Trump signed a memo around 6 p.m. Pacific ordering 2,000 National Guard members to Los Angeles to protect federal officers conducting immigration operations over the objections of California Governor Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass. Bass or Bass? That seems really dramatic. And that was on the 7th? Jesus. I wonder if he's ass pained about losing so many court cases and like the Abrego Garcia stuff and everything. On June 7th, Trump signed a memo. Order 2,000. Okay. Wow, Lonnie Bro, thanks for the 3 gifted tier 2 subs, buddy. As night fell, protesters in the sheriff's department continued to clash in Compton across the LA River from the Home Depot in Paramount. Officers shot flashbang grenades and rubber bullets at the protesters who threw rocks, glass bottles, and fireworks at the officers. I wish they were very, very, very clear about who is involved in all this. You can kind of use context clues, but I'm curious if that's actually... So, like, this is saying protesters in the sheriff's department clashed in Compton. So this implies that the officers involved here are only local police, but I wonder if there were federal officers as well here. But, I don't know, whatever, I guess. Back in downtown LA Saturday evening, protesters had gathered outside the Metropolitan Detention Center. The LA Police Department created a barrier outside the building and declared an unlawful assembly, ordering demonstrators to disperse. Roughly, geez, Chucky. Never go alone. Bro, chill. This is so hardcore. You don't need this. Oh, no, wait. This is a protest. I'm sorry. I just thought this was like a backpack of the cop. This is a protester sitting on the ground in a hoodie. That's a hoodie. That's a badass hoodie. God damn. Okay. I thought it was like the cop shit. Okay. On Sunday, Roughly 20 National Guard troops arrived outside the Metropolitan Detention Center on Sunday morning, while the rest of downtown LA was largely quiet. Roads near the center and other federal buildings were closed. By 10:30 a.m. Pacific, nearly 300 members of the California Guard took positions at 3 different sites around the city. More than a dozen Homeland Security officers in riot gear joined the National Guard troops at the detention center. By 1:30 p.m., hundreds of protesters gathered at the site. And that was it for then? Wait, oh, Sunday, June 8th, that's now. Let's see. What did Donald Trump sign? Numerous incidents of violence and disorder have recently occurred and threaten to continue in response to the enforcement of federal law by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and other U.S. government personnel who are performing federal functions and supporting the faithful execution of federal immigration laws. In addition, violent protests threaten the security of and significant damage to federal immigration detention facilities and other federal property. To the extent that protests or acts of violence directly inhibit the execution of the laws, they constitute a form of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. In light of these incidents and credible threats of continued violence by the authority vested in me as President of the Constitution, or by the Constitutional laws, I'm here calling on federal service and the National Guard under 10 U.S.C. 12406. Whenever the United States or any of the Commonwealth or possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the President is unable, with the regular forces, to execute the laws of the United States, the President may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as considered necessary to repel. Okay. Invoked 10 U.S.C. Orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. Oh, so if he invokes this, then it's up to the governors to utilize these. The president can't give commands if this is the case, but okay. Further, I direct and delegate actions as necessary for the Secretary of Defense to coordinate with the governors of the states of the National Guard Bureau in identifying and ordering any into federal service, the appropriate members and units, and at least 2,000 National Guard personnel, and the duration of duty shall be for 60 days or at the discretion of the Secretary of Defense. In addition, the Secretary of Defense may employ any other members of the regular armed forces. That's so Hegseth is the one being called out here. To carry this mission, apply. This seems improper. I don't understand this, but okay. We'll see if anybody else talks about it. Wow, no, Mariz, thanks for gifting yourself a tier 5 sub, buddy. Newsom tweet on June 7th claiming that Trump is calling in the National Guard purely for spectacle. Has Newsom approved? Doesn't sound like it. Spectacle. Unless I missed something. For those keeping track, Donald Trump's National Guard had not been deployed on the ground when he posted this. Great job by the National Guard in LA after 2 days of violence, clashes and unrest. We have had an incompetent mayor, or governor and mayor, who were, as usual, unable to handle the task. These radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. Also, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. Just as a heads up, I just want you to keep this in mind as you see people talk about this, okay? As of right now, I haven't checked, by the way. I just am omniscient. There is not a single Republican, MAGA, who is complaining about the usurpation of state rights by a federal government to do policing measures in any of the states. Not a single Republican MAGA person is complaining. All those same people who used to say, we are not a democracy, we are a republic. We are not a democracy, we are a republic. We are a constitutional republic. One of the most important things of the Constitution is serves as the foundation for our system of governance, which is a federalized system, which grants powers to the states. I'm sorry, that is wrong. It grants power to the federal government, and where power is not granted to the federal government, it reserves it for the states, okay? Now all of those people who said, we're not a democracy, we're a republic, all of them have switched to, actually, we are a total pure democracy, we voted for Trump. All of their arguments have changed to pure democracy arguments. Trump won the popular vote. Trump won a mandate. Trump won the popular vote. He won the popular vote. He can do whatever he wants. We're democracy, 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 popular vote, democracy. All that talk of republic, all of it was bullshit. MAGA have no values. To repeat, they will defend gallows. If Trump starts executing people in the street, all of them will defend it, even though they say they won't now, or they just will laugh about it now. They'll all defend it. Same thing they will with him running for a third term. Same thing they will with him setting in the federal guard, I guess, for policing measures. But, okay. Homers, I don't know why you keep gifting yourself tier 5 subs, I think, but thanks, I guess. Another Newsom tweet on the 8th stating that Trump was taking credit for quelling the violence before the National Guard was even deployed, was even present on the ground.
The Republican governors, they all deserve credit, that stood by Governor Abbott's side. If you didn't stand with him in solidarity, I'm not sure Biden wouldn't have precipitated a real crisis down there.
Yeah, Sean, I went the actual day that showdown was supposed to happen. People asked me why, when I heard the news, I immediately the next day was at the border. And it was because of what I heard Democrats encouraging the president to do. They were encouraging President Biden to activate our National Guard soldiers so that they would stand down. He actually was going to take control of our South Dakota National Guard and actually activate them so that they would not protect America. So recognizing the real threat that was to states' rights and how that would be the first time in history a president would pay a soldier to not fight, to not protect our country, made me show up in Texas the next day to let Governor Abbott know I'm here. South Dakota is with you. We will defend our Constitution. We will defend our rights, because the last several years we've seen the Democrats take away our freedom of religion, our freedom of assembly, our freedom of speech. We can't let them take away our states' rights, too, especially our right to protect ourselves.
Remember, states' rights, except when it's their president, now the only thing that matters is the federal government. Wait, what the fuck? Oh, no. So Newsom says, look at this, Truth Social. We just read this, right? They hadn't even been deployed when he took credit for it. And then this guy says, nice try, but no cigar. This has been edited. You're a liar. Here is the real post below. You're a disgrace. So the post below is showing This was, wait, this is just from a different time zone. 2:41 a.m. This was probably Eastern. 11:41 p.m. This is probably, oh, because Newsom is from California. Is this guy fucking retarded? It's exactly the same post. Yeah, but it's time zones, 11:41 and 2:41. Details matter. Don't expect any help in the future if you don't learn this lesson, Tim. Wait, do Russians not have time zones? What is this? Are there no time zones in Russia? Question mark. More games for you.
90. These are made for Destiny, by the way. Yeah, all of them.
This is a factory in Modulus. Here, we're producing...
4 in a row! 4!
Let's see how we got here.
4 in a row! Another dev working for Destiny.
Yes. True based. Are we the baddies? A once great American city, Los Angeles, has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. Now violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents to try and stop our deportation operations, but these lawless riots only strengthen our resolve. I am directing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, in coordination with all other relevant departments and agencies, to take all such action necessary to liberate LA from the migrant invasion and to put an end to these migrant riots. Order will be restored, the illegals will be expelled, and LA will be set free. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Like, why does he always sound like a bad guy? You ever know? He always sounds like the bad guy in a movie. For us noobs, where did the idea of your handle Destiny come from? I knew I was destined for greatness a long time. No, I'm just kidding. I just thought of a cool sounding name when I was like a kid. I had like two. I was like Wing Neo Star 15 on Yahoo Messenger, and then I was Neo Destiny on Battle.net. I was just like random words, like, oh, you're cool. And then it just stuck with me because I was a gaming background. What's bad about the Trump post? Well, I don't think LA has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. He's calling this an insurrection, which actually, I think depending on the people attacking, I actually kind of agree with that. I think you could, if there was a violent group of people who were together, who were swarming against like ICE buildings to stop immigration policy from the federal government, I actually think that would hit all of the things to call it an insurrection, an insurrectionist mob. I think that's actually fair. But I mean, it seems pretty obvious that LA had the resources to handle it. California had the resources to handle it. So him being so hungry and thirsty to activate his National Guard here just seems like really ridiculous. Like it's... But I mean, this is what authoritarian leaders like to do. It's just crazy to me that, like, for all these guys who were obsessed with Jordan Peterson and archetypes and stories and Jung, like, all of them just sound so much like every authoritarian bad guy leader from V for Vendetta, or like from every movie ever.
Chancellor, I know no one seems to want to discuss this, but now for the terror report has been... Chief Inspector Finch.
Do you have any evidence to support?
Where's the one where he's talking about how they'll fuck over everybody? Maybe it's right before he dies. In V for Vendetta, the country, like his rule was actually facing a real threat because of the main character. At least that was actually a threat and not just like 100 protesters in LA. But I don't know, he sounds like every bad guy ever. Always. Whatever. Stephen Miller tweets, what is a correct term to describe foreign nationals waving foreign flags, rioting and obstructing federal law enforcement attempting to expel illegal foreign invaders? Okay. I will say it's going to be really funny to see all of MAGA come to a very crystal clear understanding of what an insurrection is in response to this stuff, though. That's going to be very rich, right? Remember before it was all about, well, what are the chances of it actually succeeding? You know, like, did anything even come from it? Or like all of those arguments are all going to fall to the wayside. All of those arguments are going to fall completely away. Wait, real quick, what is this? Texas man born to U.S. soldier on U.S. Army base, abroad, deported. He has no citizenship to any country. Wait, no shot. There must be more to this story. Should a baby born to a U.S. citizen father deployed to a U.S. Army base in Germany have U.S. citizenship? Yeah, obviously. Bases, U.S. bases are U.S. territory. I think my sister was born, I'm almost positive. My half-sister was born in Okinawa, I think. I'm just curious. I'm curious. Do you remember the Texas-Biden border dispute? Does the LA stuff relate to this? Kind of, maybe, not really. I don't know. I don't really think so. Your sister Japanese? No, she's American. She was born on we have a U.S. base in Okinawa. Why? Are bases normally like per military branch, or is a base normally for all the branches? It's like my parents were in the Air Force. I know there's an Air Force base. Oh, no, it's Offutt Air Force Base. So I guess it's not like, but I'm sure all the branches could use it if they needed to, right? Like could the Army or the Navy or whatever use, they can be individual or joint. It depends. Okay. I thought that bases are always considered U.S. territory. Am I crazy? 10 years ago, Jermaine Thomas was the center of a case brought before the Supreme Court. Should a baby born to a U.S. citizen father deployed to a U.S. Army base in Germany have U.S. citizenship? Like, yes, like two different ways. His father's a citizen and he was born on a U.S. base. Wait, what? Is this when has this ever been up for debate? I don't understand this at all. I don't get this at all. What if he was born in a German hospital? Ooh, well, that would get more complicated if his father wasn't a citizen. But if he's born on a U.S. base, I mean, U.S. bases are going to have hospitals and shit in them. Apparently, you have to be a citizen for 10 years before your kids automatically get citizenship, and his parent was only a citizen for 9? Oh, I've never heard that before. But that might be the case. Destiny, military bases aren't U.S. soil? Really? I thought they were. Like you're in U.S. jurisdiction, U.S. laws, and everything applies to you. Are U.S. bases, military bases, considered U.S. soil? No. Travel.gov. Okay, fuck this. If you're born in a U.S. territory, you must conduct a vital record. Okay, is a U.S. military base overseas considered U.S. territory? No, while the U.S. military controls the U.S. military base, the land remains the sovereign territory of the host country. You must show your claim to U.S. citizenship in the same way that any other U.S. citizen born overseas. If you're born outside the U.S., you need to apply for a consular report or, oh, well, never mind. I was just completely, totally wrong on that. I always thought that U.S. bases were considered U.S. territory. Wait, well then, what is the loophole there? Because I feel like wouldn't we be creating a whole bunch of stateless people if you could have people born in? Well, no, because that would be the same normally. Because like in Germany, you don't have birthright citizenship. In most European countries, you don't. How is McCain an American? His parents are probably citizens, would be my guess. Huh. Okay, well, I don't know I have no idea what the legal standard or what the laws or whatever are. Every single Democratic governor agrees Donald Trump's attempts to militarize California are an alarming abuse of power. Only the Democratic governors agree? Nice. Stop being a pussy. Newsom needs to send the LAPD. No, Newsom wouldn't have control over it. It'd be like California Highway Patrol. What do you call state? Wait, are there? There are state police, right? Like the troopers on the highway are state police. They should send the LAPD and state police to go arrest some federal agents. That would be wild. That would be fucking crazy. Jordan Peterson, what went wrong? This is an Alex thing.
Surrounded.
I don't know if this will be worth watching or not.
Last year, I was in the hot seat of Jubilee's Surrounded series. I was one atheist surrounded by 25 Christians, and I had a wonderful time. Recently, Jordan Peterson took a crack at it. He was one Christian surrounded by 25 atheists. At least he was until Jubilee changed the title of the video, probably because Jordan Peterson kept refusing to clarify whether or not he calls himself a Christian.
Since you yourself are a Christian, right? That's, people debate about that, and I generally don't discuss it publicly.
Which, fair enough, nobody should be forced to adopt a label that they're uncomfortable with. But then, why would you agree to this project if you are famously unwilling to call yourself the very thing that the episode is based around? The episode was clearly planned as one Christian surrounded by atheists, and although I understand why Peterson doesn't want to box himself into a worldview, it's a little bit unfair to the people who showed up, obviously preparing quite hard beforehand in order to debate on the world stage against a Christian, only to find out that the person they're debating against doesn't call himself a Christian. The episode was actually quite shocking to watch and has been widely regarded as a bit of a disaster. It certainly contained some awkward moments.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
As for myself, I've also spent a fair amount of time with Jordan Peterson trying to get to the bottom of what his religious views are.
Did a man have intercourse with Mary and produce Jesus? That's a factual question. It's not a value question.
You must understand what you're being asked here. So I think I'm quite well placed to offer a commentary on what I think went wrong when Jordan Peterson paid a visit to Jubilee. We're of course not going to watch the whole thing. I'm going to select some moments, beginning with the moment that I first came across listening to this that made me think to myself, okay, fine, I'll make a bloody response.
So in the Bible, it talks a lot about slavery, right? Yes. Yes. So in that, it teaches you how to take care of a slave. Rather than saying slavery is wrong, I think it should
says
say
that in the story of Moses.
It says slavery is incorrect. It says
Well,
it's
that's
immoral.
why Moses leads his people away from slavery.
So this seems completely confused to me. It is, of course, true that the Hebrew Bible not only mentions or describes slavery, but proactively condones it and does indeed give you instructions on exactly how to own and sell other human beings as private property. But Peterson makes an interesting observation. In the story of Exodus, the Israelites are enslaved in Egypt, and God frees them from slavery, which Peterson interprets as God telling us that slavery is wrong. Otherwise, why would he have liberated the Israelites from slavery? But there's a big problem with this. Of course, God liberated the the Israelites from slavery because the Israelites are God's chosen people. God made a covenant with Abraham and promised that his descendants would inherit a land where they would be together and worship God. In Exodus chapter 2, we read that the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out to God, and God heard their groaning and remembered the covenant he made with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. The Israelites were God's chosen people. That's why he freed them from Egyptian bondage. But once he did free them, he begins immediately telling them how they can own other people as private property, that is, as slaves. Take, for example, Leviticus chapter 25, which comes after the Exodus. We read, "Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves." That is, the nations that are outside of Israel. So not talking about Israelite slaves, but other nations. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. Sounds a lot like slavery to me. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. But you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. So why can you buy male and female slaves from the nations around you, make them your property for life, bequeath them to your children as inheritable property, but not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly? The difference is that the Israelites are God's chosen people, so they get a different set of rules. This is a crucial and I think obvious distinction in the Hebrew Bible, which completely undercuts what Peterson is saying here. But as an Israelite, you can actually have a Hebrew slave. You just have to treat them differently to the slaves from the nations around you. Take a look at Exodus 21. That's that same Exodus which recounts the story of God liberating the Israelites from Egypt. When you buy a male Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, but in the 7th, he shall go out a free person without debt. So the kind of slavery that we're talking about here for Hebrews is more like a kind of indentured servitude. You only keep them for a set amount of time, after which they get to go free. Unless, of course, it's a girl. If a man sells his daughter into slavery, she doesn't go free like the male slaves do. She's a slave for life. Oh, and I'm reading here from the updated NRSV translation. The NIV translates the Hebrew word ebed as servant here rather than slave. But take a look at Deuteronomy chapter 5, where that same word ebed is used. Remember that you were slaves, ebed, in Egypt. So whatever kind of slavery or servitude we're talking about here in Exodus, it's the same word the Bible uses to describe the Israelites under Egyptian bondage. Oh, and for that male servant who gets to go free after 6 years, if the master gives him a wife and he has children, then when he goes free, the wife and the children stay with the master. But if the man decides that he loves his wife and his children and his master and decides to stay with them, what do you think happens? Do you think they all get to go free together? No. You take the male to the doorpost, you pierce his ear like cattle, and he becomes your servant for life. Later in that same chapter, we read, anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result, but they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. Remember, this is from the book of Exodus, the book which Jordan Peterson thinks tells us that slavery is definitely wrong and immoral. Later, in Deuteronomy chapter 20, God is preparing the Israelites to march into the promised land, and specifically tells them the difference in how they should treat those outside the promised land versus those who currently reside within it. When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. That sounds pretty decent. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. Some peace. If they refuse to make peace and they engage you in battle, lay siege to that city. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all the men in it. As for the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves, and you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. So the women, the children, and the livestock are taken as plunder. Now it actually says that this is how you treat all of the cities that are at a distance from you and do not belong to the nations nearby. But what about those nations that inhabit the land that God has promised to the Israelites? However, in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not leave alive anything that breathes. Completely destroy them. And then it lists a bunch of nations which are to be completely destroyed. So these nations get to escape becoming slaves of the Israelites by being killed. I could go on and on about this, but suffice to say, the idea that the Bible tells us slavery is wrong because it narrates God freeing his chosen people from foreign bondage before going on to give precise instructions about how to own other human beings as private property, particularly those who are foreign and therefore not part of God's chosen people, is at best a gross misreading of the text.
Says slavery is incorrect? Says
Well,
it's
that's
immoral?
why Moses leads his people away from slavery.
But why does the Bible predicate and tell people exactly how to take care of a slave? Isn't that immoral? Wouldn't you say that culturally we've evolved as a species, as he said earlier about empathy?
Yeah, I would say that the reason we evolved, so to speak, away from slavery was because the West was founded on Judeo-Christian morality and the presumption that every person was made in the image of God. And so slavery itself became immoral, and that was established by Protestant Christians in the UK, who then convinced the UK government for 200 years to go to war on
And
slavery.
wouldn't you say that this is about the cultural evolution of humans in general rather than just Christianity?
No, I think it's the flowering of the ideas that were embedded in the biblical texts across long spans of time.
Okay, so this is an interesting debate, especially the long spans of time bit. I mean, if the Bible really were as anti-slavery as Peterson is making it out to be, isn't it a bit strange that it took literally thousands of years for society to realize that, only finally deciding that slavery was a bad idea around about the same time as the Enlightenment? I mean, of course, there is a long and celebrated history of Christian opposition to slavery, but there's also a slightly less celebrated history of Christian justification for slavery. I mean, I like to think of it this way. Imagine you were to go back in time to some kind of plantation in the American South where slaves were working in the field. Suppose you went to the master of the house and you said, this is wrong. Not just the way you're treating them, but just owning them as private property is a fundamentally immoral thing to do. Where is the first place that slave owner could turn, and compellingly so, in order to justify what he's doing? It goes without saying that it would be the Bible, but I'm going to say it anyway just because some people don't seem to realize this. If the Bible really were anti-slavery, I would probably expect it to say so. But at the very least, I would expect it to not proactively give instructions on exactly how and for how long and in what manner you can own other human beings as private property. property and bequeath them to your children as inheritable property. It's no wonder that it took thousands of years of the Bible's existence for people to start thinking that slavery might be wrong, because it's not exactly the most obvious conclusion that you can draw. We're sometimes told that the New Testament changes things a bit, but for one thing, the New Testament constantly reaffirms slavery, such as in Ephesians chapter 6, slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Now, there is also the injunction to masters to treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, it says. So maybe the masters should be good to their slaves at the very least. But what if the master isn't good to the slave? Well, in 1 Peter, we read, "Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh." The author makes a comparison to Christ taking on suffering for the sake of righteousness, and essentially says that slaves should do the same thing. Now, some people like to point to Galatians chapter 3, where Paul says, "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." This is surely Paul saying that slavery is a bad thing. But they tend to forget Paul also says, "Nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Is Paul some kind of radical gender abolitionist? No. He's just saying that whether you're male or female is not relevant to your salvation in Christ. He still thinks that males and females exist and should exist on earth. And so if we're going to be consistent here, we have to think he's speaking in the same way about slavery. If we want to interpret this as Paul saying there should be no slave or free, then we have to also interpret him as saying there should be no male or female, which, funnily enough, is an interpretation I find Christians tend to resist. But anyway, even if the Bible is in some way anti-slavery, at the very, very least, it is incredibly unclear about it. And the fact remains that if you showed this text to somebody who'd never heard of it before, you just can't come away from reading this entire library that is the Bible, thinking that it provides a good foundation for saying that slavery is wrong.
I feel like this is just humans editing based on the cultural evolution.
Well, what do you mean by just?
Just?
Yeah, just humans.
Well, humans.
Editing.
Well, based on culture and history, right? We get better.
Well, they did do it based on culture and history, but
Yes.
culture and history have their foundations too. So.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about slavery. So many people bolstered it based on
Everyone
the Bible. Based on the Bible. They looked at it and they justified it in the United States and the Deep South. They justified slavery.
Yeah, but
based
the
on
main thrust of Protestant thought in particular was stringently against slavery,
Which-
and it was about the only movement in the history.
I'm dying, okay? If I have to go again, I'm just going to cut my stream and I might be back tonight, or I'll just sleep it off. Ugh. Is this worth it, or what is this? This is a good video. DSP playing the new Mario Kart. It's a little loud, just so you know. Are you alright? Oh yeah, just stomach problems. I think I'm like on the last day or two of my sickness, hopefully. Ugh.
Wow. Nothing I can do about that. Knock me off the track from behind. Jeez. Dude, that's twice. They did it twice in a row. They knocked me off the track from behind. Wow, that's ridiculous. I don't even know what happened. What just hit me? I couldn't tell what hit me. Sorry. Not really. Oh, what hit me? Again. No idea. Heck, what's going on? What? What the fuck? What the fuck? What just happened? The game put me in the wrong direction? Yeah, what were you saying, Buckwell, about me sucking? Where was Asmongold there? Why wasn't Asmongold watching me there? Where were you, Asmongold? What were you busy doing? That's right, clip that shit.
Okay. Okay, I don't care about this. This is unhinged. Fantano memes.
He finally said something. Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here. Internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. Let's talk about legendary UK singer-songwriter of Radiohead and the Smile fame, Mr. Thom Yorke. Because he is now talking after months and months and months of silence. For well over a year, fans of the band Radiohead, if you haven't noticed, have
just the idea of calling it months of silence. I'm sorry. Since when are we requiring bands to give statements on complex geopolitical issues? Like what? Like it's, I know this used to be an overplayed meme, but it's literally this. Like we're literally here.
Yeah, man, they would. But I'm like, for real, why you care so much what the Dixie Chicks say? It's not like they political scientists and nothing. They just bitches that can sing good. You know what I mean? Stop worshiping celebrities so much. Just don't listen, pay attention. I remember right around September 11th, Ja Rule was on MTV. That's what they said. They said, we got Ja Rule on the phone. Let's see what Ja's thoughts are on this tragedy. Who gives a fuck what Ja Rule thinks at a time like this, nigga? This is ridiculous. I don't want to dance. I'm scared to death. I want some answers that Ja Rule might not have right now. You think when bad shit happens to me, I'll be in the crib like, oh my God, this is terrible.
Strong men.
Could somebody please find Ja Rule, get hold of this motherfucker so I can make sense of all this.
Okay.
Been kind of lobbying for either Tom or individual members of the band or the band collectively to make some kind of public statement in support of the effort.
Like, why? You don't need them to make a public statement about this. Like, you can do everything, but it's because of what I said before. Just through this, I think through this frame of analysis, you can start to understand more what I said earlier about how people on the left aren't concerned with political power. They want social power, that they never really care or plan on translating into political power, right? They want to be able to be part of a club and then force other people to be in the club or out of the club. And they want Tom York to join the club to show how cool the club is and to show how powerful the club is, but not politically powerful, just socially powerful. Real quick, let's see the disgusting statement that Tom York said. Some guy shouting at me from the dark last year when I was picking up a guitar to sing the final song alone in front of 9,000 people in Melbourne didn't really seem like the best moment to discuss the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Afterwards, I remained in shock that my supposed silence was somehow being taken as complicity, and I struggled to find an adequate way to respond to this and to carry on with the rest of the shows on the tour. That silence, my attempt to show respect for all those who are suffering and those who have died, and to not trivialize it in a few words, has allowed their other opportunistic groups to use intimidation and defamation to fill in the blanks, and I regret giving them this chance. This had a heavy toll on my mental health. 8 pages, bruh. I would hope that for anyone who's ever listened to a note of the music of my band, or any of the music I've created over the years, or looked at the artwork or read any of the lyrics, it would be self-evident that I could not possibly support any form of extremism or dehumanization of others. Oh no, he's going to say it was bad when it happened to Jews and Israeli as well. Oh shit. All I see is a lifetime worth of work with my fellow musicians and artists is a pushing against such things, trying to create work. Sounds naff, but true. For others, let me fill in the blanks so when it's clear. I think that Netanyahu and his crew of extremists are totally out of control, need to be stopped, and that the international community should put all the pressure it can on them to cease. Their excuse is of self-defense has long since worn thin and has been replaced by a transparent desire to take control of Gaza and the West Bank. I believe this ultranationalist administration has hidden itself behind terrifying and grieving people that use them to deflect any criticism, using that fear and grief to further their ultranationalist agenda with horrible or terrible consequences, as we see now with the horrific blockade of aid of Gaza. While our lives tick along as normal, these endless thousands of innocent human souls are still being expelled from the earth for what? At the same time, the unquestioning Free Palestine refrain that surrounds us all does not answer the simple question of why the hostages have still not all been returned. For what possible reason? Why did Hamas choose the truly horrific... Oh! Criticizing Hamas? Disgusting. Disgusting. Disappointing, uninformed take. This is not a both sides issue. How to disappoint completely. This is the most centrist thing I've read, and that's not a compliment. Karma police arrest this man. This sucks, dude. "77 years of occupation, oppression, and violence, and you don't understand why some people might want to rape a baby? Why some people might want to murder civilians? Come on, bro. Yes, use your massive platform to play victim. So inspiring. Hardy face, hardy face, hardy face. All lives matter. Tom York, frowny face. All right. Horrible.
To free Palestine or a just generally right course when it comes to things such as performing over there in Israel, obviously in hope that some kind of cultural boycott will actually create some kind of dent in the efforts to change things over there politically, Israel, Palestine, relations-wise. And on top of it, historically, Radiohead has been a band and change things over there politically.
I would have to read. I just don't. Fuck, South Africa needs to be on the list. Is that really what pushed them? It was the boycotts that pushed them to
politically, Israel-Palestine relations-wise. And on top of it, historically, Radiohead has been a band that has not been shy when it's come to working their political ideology into their art, being outspoken on certain issues, being someone who came...
This would be a really great time to provide examples, but okay.
...age in the 2000s. I very vividly remember 9/11, the War on Terror.
9/11 and the war on... What did they say for 9/11? That we condemn the United States? I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe I feel like I would remember that, but who knows?
Invading Iraq, how awful and how terrible and, frankly, for me, radicalizing all of that stuff was, but also how few artists were willing to stand and speak on this issue at the time, and those who were actually seeing a lot of flack sometimes in the media. Radiohead, for the time, refreshingly, actually was one of those outspoken bands, and actually seeing a lot of flack sometimes in the media. Radiohead, for the time.
If I was going to write a protest song about climate change in 2015, it would be shit, he says. About climate change? It got into this big fight. They said, if you don't agree to meet the Prime Minister, friends of the Earth will be denied all access to him. York, because of the Iraq War, I didn't want to do it. It felt like it was morally unacceptable to be photographed with Blair. Because of the Iraq War in 2015? Or how long ago was that? How far after the Iraq War was he saying this? Come on. Okay.
Time refreshingly actually was one of those outspoken bands, and they actually laced quite a bit of social commentary into their album Hail to the Thief at the time too. As a result, I don't know if it's necessarily unfair for people who remember this time period, remember Radiohead taking a stance on this issue, and also sort of come to the conclusion that maybe you also care about this other major Middle Eastern political issue, which also is very deeply connected to Western imperialism and also involves
not really, but okay.
Using the boogeyman of terrorism to punish a populace of innocent people. Given that Radiohead in the past has sort of made
Not really, no.
A right call on that stuff when it's come to the war in Iraq, the war on terror. There doesn't seem to be as much of an awareness of how all of these same issues kind of play into this dichotomy as well. I get it. Not every person is well educated on every single foreign policy issue known to man. Lord knows I'm not. However, it's been well over a year since October 7th happened, since our social media feeds have just been filled with the horrors of one nonstop bombing campaign after another. Not only has there been a lot of information available and time passed, but also it's not like Tom York hasn't had sort of people in his life and in the music industry willing to talk to him and approach him in a friendly and understandable manner on this issue. It's been documented that Roger Waters of Pink Floyd fame, in fact, tried to do.
Roger Waters gives the most. Oh no, he would love Roger Waters. I think Roger Waters' statement was one of the most like dick suck, pro pally, crazy, unhinged, insanely retarded fucking statements I think I'd ever seen. I lost all respect. I mean, not really. Actually, that's a lie. I didn't lose all respect. I don't have any respect for musicians and their political positions. They're musicians. I don't look to these guys for fucking political takes.
Do that, but unfortunately it's all just kind of really fallen on Tom York's deaf ears. If that's going to be the choice you make, you have to understand that there are going to be members of your fan base who are like not really too happy about that, which is why I thought silence on this issue would continue to be Tom's choice. But he in fact,
oh yeah, he's a huge Russian dick suck as well. Yeah.
Recently posted a multi-page statement on this issue on his Instagram page. He seems to start this statement off with a reaction to that infamous video of him at a live show in Australia last year, where someone from the crowd was shouting to him to address this whole thing, and Tom like just kind of dismissed the whole thing. I believe just walked off.
Come up on the fucking stage, say what you want to say. Don't stand there like a coward. Come here.
I can't believe Tom York wasn't ready to make a comprehensive statement on Israel-Palestine. It also shows you, remember again, it shows you what they're after, what they're expecting, right? Like, why would you even want him to make a statement on this? Like, doesn't it make you look like a retard? Like, he obviously probably doesn't know that much about it, but none of these people do it as well, right? Because it's not about politics. It's not about reaching some conclusion or reaching some satisfactory end for both sides. It's just about, like, the social group shit. Like, I can't imagine. Like, imagine you're arguing with a group of friends and two of you are arguing about an interpretation on Men in Black, or arguing about, like, do you think Interstellar was good? And then both of you look to a third friend, like, what about you? Do you think Interstellar was good or not? And your friend's like, I don't know, I haven't watched it. You're like, take a position. Was it good or was it not? Take a position on it. Like, he's like, you have to make a statement. Was Interstellar the best Nolan movie? Or was it trash? Me, just take a position. It's like, I don't know, bro. I've never watched it. Take a position. You have to take a position right. And it's like, bro, Tom York is probably not a fucking Middle Eastern scholar on the Middle East. Repetitive.
Yeah, say it. You want to piss on everybody's night? Come on. Okay, you do. See you later.
As he says, some guy shouting at me from the dark last year when I was picking up a guitar to sing the final song alone in front of 9,000 people in Melbourne didn't really seem like the best moment to discuss the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Afterwards, I remained in shock that my supposed silence was somehow being taken as complicity, and I struggled to find an adequate way to respond to this and to carry on with the rest of the shows on the tour. That silence, my attempt to show respect for all those who are suffering and those who have died, and not to trivialize it in a few words, has allowed other opportunistic groups to use intimidation and defamation to fill in the blanks, and I regret giving them this choice. This has had a heavy toll on my mental health. I'm a little confused. Is Tom sort of saying that a few words there at that show would have trivialized the situation, or saying anything at all over the course of the past year plus would have trivialized the situation? I guess I just don't really get how speaking on pertinent social issues publicly trivializes them. I mean, sure.
Because he doesn't know anything about it, you fucking retard. Not that you know anything about it. What a stupid fucking... He's so stupid. Dude, politics is fucking... Sam Hyatt has destroyed more Western commentators, I think, than any other individual fucking person. Holy shit, he rotted Ian's mind, and he rotted Fantano's mind, because Fantano used to be a huge fucking Sam Hyatt fan. Now he's had to do the biggest course correct in the universe in order to suck off all the weird, ultra-progressive, tanky, Marxist, leftist, like, lefty dudes. It's so cringe.
At all over the course of the past year plus would have trivialized the situation.
You trivialize... How do you... You're trivializing it. Does he understand? No, he doesn't, of course. You're trivializing the situation by claiming that Tom York, like some little Ahmed Palestinian kid who just had his family blown away, is like, God, please, please, I need Tom York to give a statement on the fucking war in Gaza right now, please, please, Tom York, please. We just need Tom York's. We need Tom York's situation. Please have a statement on the situation right now, please, Tom York. Like, Jesus, what the fuck is wrong with you? This is unhinged. This is like unbelievably unhinged. This is like South Park tier shit, right? Music critic Fantano goes live to talk about how disappointed it is that a band member from a 30-year-old fucking alternative rock group hasn't given a definitive statement on Israel-Palestine, the world's longest unsolved geopolitical conflict. Like, holy shit, how fucking retarded is this? It's like jokes on jokes on jokes. Oh my God.
I guess I just don't really get how speaking on pertinent social issues publicly trivializes them. I mean, sure, it can if maybe whatever you're saying doesn't really, I guess, address the gravity of the issue, or you come across like you didn't really look into it in any way whatsoever. Or, I don't know, if you talk to the crowd as if it doesn't matter, that certainly would trivialize it. But advocating for what you believe in, given that Radiohead is a band that historically has...
Make sure to check the comments. He was fan base eating up the slop. I think they go 50... now they probably mostly do. They used to kind of go back and forth on it. I don't know. Now I imagine they would. Maybe? Oh, no, never mind. Okay. Maybe they're not eating it. Maybe they're not slurping it up. Why is Ja Rule being so quiet about this? True. Okay.
Done that, it doesn't inherently trivialize the thing that you're talking about. So that just kind of reads as a sidestep off the bat, frankly. And again, while I understand it can be very sad to be aggressively criticized on the internet by tens of thousands of people who don't really know you, I feel like making the first page of this about your depression does actually, trivialize the issue in the way that you're allegedly afraid you would. Personally,
Bro, like, how do you dig through these with a fine-tooth comb? So, God, these people should just be excised from the fucking internet and from society at large. Like, you're going through, like, I can't believe, like, if he would have released a statement after the first page, I feel like this fucking retard's first statement would be like, well, why did it take him so long? I like how he didn't address at all the fact that he's waited over a year to say anything about this. He was totally absent from his statement. Like, bro, holy shit. Like, he's a band member. He plays music. What are you expecting? Like, you're going through a fine-tooth comb to analyze the geopolitical take of a guy on one of the most complicated issues currently facing the world, who like doesn't capitalize his eyes all the time. Like here and here. Like, come on, bro. Are we being real right now? My God.
Pretty fucking depressed over this issue too, but not over the weirdos that sometimes turn up in my comments or my DMs because I'm either not staunchly enough in agreement with them or because they're just on the opposite side of me. No, I'm mostly depressed over all of the innocent people over there in Palestine who are being killed, who are starving.
Yeah, you sound so sad and depressed about it, bro.
I would hope that for anyone who has ever listened to a note of the music, my band, or any of the music I've created over the years, or looked at the artwork or read...
Right, he's going to say, yeah, this is exactly why we expected a statement sooner from you, bro.
in the lyrics, it would be self-evident that I could not possibly support any form of extremism or dehumanization of others. All I see in a lifetime's worth of work with my fellow musicians and artists is pushing against such things, trying to create work that goes beyond what it means to be controlled, coerced, threatened, to suffer, to be intimidated, and instead to encourage critical thinking beyond borders. The commonality of love and experience and free creative expression sounds naff, but true. Yes, I don't disagree with this page. These are the things your fans have accurately read in your work repeatedly, which is why they are concerned and curious as to why you would not sort of like be ahead of the curve in talking about this problem, addressing it. And
you have to have a hot take on literally every single issue. Like, is anybody mad that nobody made a statement about what's going on between India and Pakistan? No, because it's brown versus brown there. No one gives a fuck about any of those people.
Maybe just be a bit more understanding of like why you might catch some flack for performing over in Israel while they're very much involved in at the time.
When was this performance? Radiohead performance in Israel. 2017? Okay.
I'm maintaining Palestine as pretty much an open-air prison. For others, let me fill in the blanks now so we're nice and clear. I think Netanyahu and his crew of extremists are totally out of control and need to be stopped, and that the...
This is good, this is good, this is good. He'll say this is good but could be stronger, this is good but could be stronger. And then as soon as he gets to the criticisms of Hamas, he'll be like, oh my God, is he fucking serious right now? Really?
International community should put all the pressure it can on them to cease. Their excuse of self-defense has long worn thin and has been replaced by a transparent desire to take control of Gaza and the West Bank permanently. I believe this ultranationalist administration has hidden itself behind a terrified and grieving people and used them to deflect any criticism, using that fear and grief to further their ultranationalist agenda with terrible consequences, as we see now with the horrific blockade of aid to Gaza. And yes, this is true. I would add in addition to this, that this is the...
Genocide, apartheid. Please use genocide, apartheid, or ethnic cleansing. Please, one of the three. I'm almost ready to come. Please, one of the three. Genocide, apartheid, or ethnic cleansing. Please use one of these three. Also, I don't like how he called them ultranationalists instead of ethno-nationalists, but we'll leave that one, we'll leave that on the floor right now. Okay. Please, please, please.
Side with all the funding, all the power, endless blank checks, no red lines, tons and tons and tons of political lobbying over here in the US too. But Tom also says, while our lives tick along as normal, these endless...
Fuck, I didn't get to come. God damn it.
Thousands of innocent human souls are still being expelled from the earth for what? At the same time, the unquestioning free Palestine refrain that surrounds us all does not answer the simple question of why the hostages have not all been returned for what...
Oh my God, bro, are you serious? What about all the Palestinian hostages?
Possible reason. Okay, I guess I'll answer that since Tom asked. Because Israel doesn't want them. Israel has in fact had multiple opportunities to negotiate for the trade of these hostages.
Remember, every time they talk about negotiating for hostages, that's a war crime. Hostages are war crimes. They're defending war crimes. And they're saying that you should use war crimes as leverage to negotiate against other people. But, okay.
Netanyahu has got in the way every single time. Why did Hamas choose the truly horrific acts of October 7th? The answer seems obvious, and I believe Hamas chooses to hide behind the suffering of its people in an equally cynical fashion for their own purposes, which, I mean, okay, you can make that argument. I don't think that's an entirely incorrect read of the dynamic, but...
Oh, it's more charitable than I thought. Good job.
With that being said, that does not justify the collective murder and punishment of thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
Did Tom York say that? Who's he talking about? Fuck, did I miss a page in the thing? Shit, fuck, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention to Tom York's statement. I must have skipped the page where Tom York was like, this is why I believe it is justified for thousands and thousands of Palestinians to be killed by the Israeli government. Huh. Or maybe he deleted it. Maybe he edited it afterwards.
That had nothing to do with the horrific acts of October 7th. It doesn't vindicate the initiation of all of that on October 8th, and it certainly doesn't vindicate...
Oh, he's saying that they had nothing to do with the October 7th attacks. Damn. Tom York could have included that. Like, maybe he could have said something along the lines of, like, Hamas chooses to hide behind the suffering of its people in an equally cynical fashion for their own purposes. Maybe that's kind of like what that means. Or maybe Fantano just likes to say a bunch of words without really having any fucking idea what he's saying. And he's just another one of these online influencer yappers who doesn't speak with any amount of substance at all. Well, I don't know. Who knows?
Continuing on with all of that over a year later. He also says, I also think there is a further and extremely important point to make. Social media witch hunts, nothing new on either side, pressuring artists and whoever they feel like that week to make statements, etc., do very little except heighten the tension, fear, and oversimplification of what are complex problems that merit proper face-to-face debate by people who genuinely wish the killing to stop and an understanding to be found.
What's complex about the Holocaust? What's complex about genocide?
Again, while I guess I get the point, and I do believe on some level, like, when it comes to addressing and changing issues such as this, maybe getting celebrities to say things publicly about all of it isn't like priority number one. But I'm sorry, like, where is the face-to-face debate? When is the face-to-face debate happening? Is Tom York in contact with the person who is scheduling the face-to-face debate? Personally, I think I've seen enough kids starving and getting blown up to figure this should just stop. We should just stop it. And when I say we, I mean the West's military support of all of this. But like, while I understand that Tom is entitled to say and do whatever he feels like saying and doing when it comes to whatever topic he pleases, and that it might be a little obnoxious to deal with fans of any sort urging him to make public statements about stuff he doesn't necessarily feel passionate about. We're not talking about an instance of maybe you did some kind of weird social faux pas and everybody's just like dogpiling you over it for no reason. It's not like your comments are flooded with millions of people being like, Tom, say something about paper straws. We need to start just using paper straws. The issue we are currently discussing will go down in history as one of the greatest and most awful human tragedies of the modern era. I don't know. Personally, I kind of understand the urgency. This kind of deliberate polarization does not serve our fellow human beings and perpetuates a constant us and them mentality. It destroys hope and maintains a sense of isolation. The very things that extremists use to maintain their position. We facilitate their hiding in plain sight if we assume that the extremists and the people they claim to represent are one and the same, indivisible. If our world is ever going to move on from these dark times and find peace, it will only be when we rediscover what we share in common and the extremists are sent back to sit in the darkness from whence they came. Extremists, not good. I don't really like extremists. I'm not messing with no extremists over here. I don't disagree that there are, extremists in the leagues of Hamas, and there are extremists with Netanyahu and the Israeli government, West Bank settlers too, and all of that. But one of these two groups is most definitely getting a whole lot of American and Western funding to do what they're doing.
I don't know why people keep doing this red herring. Oh, I know why. It's because he's never thought about this issue ever in his entire life past whatever he's read on like Instagram Reels. But like, you keep mentioning Western support. So if the United States stops funding Israel, do you stop caring about the issue? Is that the only reason you care about this? Like, let's say tomorrow the U.S. says no more government funding, no more aid to Israel, and then Israel's like, okay, and they're like, all right, we'll get our money from somewhere else, and then they keep doing the same exact shit. Are you guys all like, okay, well at least we're not involved in it anymore? Is that really your view of the entire issue?
Of American and Western funding to do what they're doing. I don't think my government should be involved in supporting that at all in any fashion. And I don't know, when we all sort of just meet in this...
Like, the U.S. was the largest contributor aid to Gaza as well, right? If we just stopped both, you'd be fine with everything?
Center and try to find ways to get along. Like, how after that point are we banishing away all the extremists to go sit in the corner? When does the banishing happen? When do the extremists get banished? Tom is talking about the extremists like they're Thanos and we're going to send them over to like, another dimension and we'll never see...
You mean like you talk about the Jews in Israel?
From them again. I sympathize completely with the desire to do something when we are witnessing such horrific suffering on our devices every day. It completely makes sense, but I now think it is a dangerous illusion to believe reposting 1 or 2 line messages are meaningful, especially if it is to condemn your fellow human beings. There are unintended consequences. I mean, if I see my fellow human beings doing horrific and condemnable things, I will condemn those things. That is what I will do. I don't care if they're my fellow human beings. If they're doing something that is worth condemning, condemn it. It is shouting from the darkness. It is not looking people in the eye when you speak. It is making dangerous assumptions. It is not debate. It is not critical thinking. Okay, when are we critical thinking? 1, when does the critical thinking start? And 2, when's the debate happening? When is the Tom York, Roger Waters on stage debate to help settle the...
I'll debate Roger Waters. I'd love to. Why is this guy acting too now like he wants to see debate on this? This motherfucker runs and everybody else runs. Okay, when I show up for the debate, but they're like, oh, well, if we can get this random band dude to get bullied by other people, well, that's a debate we're in favor of. This is the Hassan approach. Jesus.
This whole thing now and for good.
What he said to me at one point, not that we ever had a conversation, he said, imagine how difficult this is for Johnny fucking Greenwood.
What is the alternative, Tom asks in the final page of this thing. I can't answer that easily. Well, damn, Tom, you've been talking this whole time like you have the answer, you know what's going on, or like, this was all going to build up to something. I do know in communities around the globe, this subject is now dangerously toxic and we are in uncharted waters. We need to turn back. Turn back where? What's the direction?
Pro-Russian? Yes, Roger Waters is crazy pro-Russian. Yeah, of course.
Back. What do we need to go back to?
Or we can go, in case you don't believe me, I'm sorry.
Of thousands.
This is 1 month ago. Maybe his positions have changed.
Thousands of dead Ukrainian and Russian soldiers, and all their sons and daughters, and aunts and mothers and fathers and uncles and cousins and friends are in this room with us today. The dead soldiers haunt me. The surviving loved ones haunt me. I feel their pain. I feel their presence in this room, and it is haunting.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the ever-popular Roger Waters, Pink Floyd's grand conceptualist, the driving force behind such albums as The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and The Wall. Roger left Pink Floyd in 1983 after the final cut, but he never stopped and has been touring the world with his own band since. Maybe most importantly, Rogers has been advocating for peace and sanity, for which we love you, by the way, around the world, and that is why we are delighted to have Roger with us today. Listen, it is a great treasure for us to have you on the show today, and just welcome to Daniel Davis Deep Dive.
Pleasure to be here, sir. I've watched you often, so let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Listen, but even before we go, for those who may not have seen, and by the way, the link to that very stirring speech before the United Nations Security Council this past February is in the description, and I recommend anyone to go and take a look at that. But I just have to ask, because obviously you're a world-famous rock star, and you've got more money than you'd ever even want to have, and yet you spend a lot of time on making issues like this and talking so passionately about peace. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about why that is, because I suspect from what I've heard from other sources here is that your father died in World War II at the Anzio beachhead. I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about your path.
Well, yeah, my father did die. My father died on February the 18th near a town called Aprila, which is a little bit inland. It was the final push by the Germans to push the bridgehead back into the sea there. So that's obviously, I was 5 months old at the time. So that's a huge influence on my life. My father was Christian, and he'd been a pacifist all his life. And then working as an ambulance driver, because he refused to join the army in 1939 when he was called up. So he drove an ambulance instead. And in his spare time, he was helping bombed out buildings in the East End of London, which was quite seriously devastated in 1940. And that's where he met my mum, who was also doing a degree. Got off the boats.
For combat deployments myself, and
photographs hidden away. And my eyes still, you have to think about, and decisions that you have to make. And some of them will be political, some of them, the basic way of it, the main evil, is the need of the Western Empire, well, the Empire of the United States of America, with all its affiliated allies, and most of Europe, that is, because they're the remains of European settler colonialist imperial progress, if you like. They are driven, basically, by they're hungry for power and for profit, and that's all, nothing else. So we have to resist the temptation to be diverted by the great words on the Declaration of Independence of your great country, for instance, that all men are created equal and have certain inalienable rights, and that you, the country of the United States, believes in that. You don't, and you never did. They lied about that. And that is expressed through almost all American foreign policy, certainly since the Second World War. So we have to understand that. So why are all those people dying in Ukraine? Partly because of that, that accounts for all the NATO expansionism after 1989, in further and further and further east, in spite of James Baker's promises and all of that. I know we don't need to go into that, because your audience knows all about that, and I know all about it. So that's kind of, we know. So this is the trigger. So it's because we have Victoria Nuland in this world that you and I have to go on TV and say, we don't have to live in Victoria Nuland's world. Victoria Nuland is criminally insane, just like Donald Trump is, and like Joe Biden was, and like Hillary Clinton was, and so on and so on and so back through our recent history. So we're living in a world that is where the big decisions are made by people who are criminally insane. And that is why we are losing all this human life.
Well, yeah, and I would actually argue slightly that there are a great many Americans who do believe in every word that you just mentioned there about the Declaration of Independence and equality. But there seems to be something happens to the mind, which I think you're onto, when you get up to a position of power. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it from some of my friends who espouse some of these things until they got into some powerful positions, and then suddenly they turned into whatever it is that you described, of all these, the panoply of people that you just mentioned there. And somehow we've got to, the people who believe in the right thing and the just thing to be able to influence, insert their power, whatever they have, to try and mitigate against that, because otherwise we have this carnage we have today.
Yeah, but that's fascinating, isn't it, Danny? Because we all imagine that moment. Say if we're Obama, who...
It's just whatever.
I'm sure that to this point, what I have written here will in no way satisfy those who choose to target myself or those I work with. They will spend time picking holes and looking for reasons to continue. We are an opportunity not to be missed, no doubt, and by either side. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, because if you look at the comments underneath this post, there are a lot of people who are not satisfied. So I have written in this the simple hope that I can join with the many millions of others praying for this suffering, isolation, and death to stop, praying that we can collectively regain our humanity and dignity and our ability to reach understanding, that one day soon this darkness will have passed. Yeah, this is pretty lame. I mean, imagine some of, I don't know, the other most major political issues and urgent problems of the past. I don't think any of the very necessary changes during those time periods would have happened if every single group involved, every single group of people who was sort of suffering under the hand of oppression in those scenarios, just kind of quietly sat there and thought like, well, let's just pray for this darkness to pass. The action and the solution in all of those situations was not just simply sit down and pray it goes away. Thoughts and prayers, Tom York essentially says here, which just kind of makes me think like, why did he even say this? Why did he even say any of this? Because once more, this does actually like trivialize the issue. As I'm speaking right now, People are being killed. People are starving. This is a very urgent issue, problem, and crisis. Tom's solution is that we need to have a face-to-face debate and just pray it all goes away, and through completely
like face-to-face debate between other people is praying it all goes away. But making really strong Instagram statements, that's not praying. That's actual activism. That's doing something, you know?
Means vanquish the extremists into the darkness, which just kind of sounds like some BS coming out of a fantasy novel, which I suppose is fitting because it's a fantasy that Tom's mindset here is actually going to change anything for the better. My expectations were low as far as Tom saying anything, and yet I am still disappointed. And at least for now, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. I'm sure you will. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out.
Cringe. Cringe, don't care. Cringe and lame.